Alvin Boyd Kuhn, The Tree of Knowledge. This is just a small book by the great philosopher and esotericist Alvin Boyd Kuhn. And this one's on the Tree of Knowledge from biblical iconography, the archetypes in some of the ancient stories that we have here all over the world, but definitely in the West. So let's jump in. The Tree of Knowledge. The healing leaves. The significance of the poetic assertion that the leaves of the tree shall be for the healing of the nations is of transcendent value, and again, it has been missed by purblind religiosity. Why is it the leaves and not the roots or the trunk or branches are to heal mankind? Why is the point of the keen allegorical reference that must be brought out. The instruction for us here lies hidden in the realization that the leaves are the periodical and distinctly cyclical manifestation of the life of the tree. They are projected seasonally on the outer body of the perennial and live and die in regular periodicity. The life of the permanent body of the tree annually pushes out beyond its previous boundaries and builds for itself a new extension of the body through which it can experience a new era of growth. All right, so really what he's saying here is that the way trees grow in nature this is the ultimate symbol, not only in the West, but the tree, known as the tree of life, is the ultimate archetypal symbol for mankind, for self-reflecting beings, because the tree represents life itself. But part of the reason why it does is because of the way a tree grows, which is a spiral, a vortex cone, the way that it sheds its previous form and expands from within to outgrow and move into a new form. And in biblical terms, the tree represents this perfect union between sky and earth, because half of the tree is reaching for the sky. It's surrounded by air, and the other half is rooted in the ground and in darkness. And we know from Hermetic teachings that all seeds essentially cannot germinate unless they're in darkness. They don't know which way is up, so to speak. They don't know which way the light or the sun is, unless, of course, they are surrounded by darkness. So therein lies that wonderful paradox known as duality. And essentially, that's what all theology is trying to mitigate, is this paradox of duality, of like spirit and matter, light and dark, form and formlessness, finite and infinite. Okay, read on. The permanent soul of being must put itself forth to exercise in new embodiment constantly and recurrently. The soul of the tree has its seasonal experience in this transient vehicle. It produces its fruit and withdraws at the cycle's end, appropriating the products of its annual activity in the leaf, but leaving the outer body of that leaf to wither and die off in the winds of autumn. So of course, the leaf is the part that is the most visual representative of transformation. The trees change color throughout the year in many trees, and they also change size and shape. They're the most apparent things that you see when you look at a tree. And then of course they drop off in the winter, leaving just the skeleton of the tree. And then of course in the spring, renewal occurs. So the leaf represents transformation. He's also talking a lot about cycles, because it's essential for human beings, self-reflecting beings, to understand that nature is constantly coming back to itself. Nature is self-renewal. That's what transformation itself is. It's transforming through self-renewal. So all the ancient peoples were very aware of cycles in nature, and so they became very aware of cycles within human nature. And the modern materialist scientists have obviously lost the awareness of these cycles, which is why their science is failing. The successive incarnations of units of spiritual mind, which are the sons of God, end quote, individualized seed fragments of God's own consciousness in the bodies of physical matter on a given planet are indeed the leaves put forth by the tree of the season after season of life. And these incarnations and the experience they give to the souls undergoing them shall truly enough be for the healing of the nations. For only through repeated embodiment in such mundane vessels of flesh can the soul from God gain that long course of instruction and enlightenment that will eventually, through opening of its eyes to truth, heal it of the imperfections that limit and distress it because of its ignorance at the very start. The tree is the tree of knowledge, and its 12 fruits are those 12 segments of complete divine understanding and mastery of life's deepest secrets. 12 main essential principles of life that man needs to learn in order to become whole. With such perfected wisdom will the men of the nations of mankind heal their infirmities and unfold their lives in beauty and happiness. How insistently the book of Proverbs drives home the preciousness of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, asserting that they surpass in value all that the heart can desire. So that's a pretty profound statement. I'm going to read that again. How insistently the book of Proverbs drives home the preciousness of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, asserting that they surpass in value all that the heart can desire. And specifically, it says that they shall be help to the man possessing them. Only through continued incarnation can the soul rise to the point of knowledge, which will enable it to free itself from all of its ills. So here he's talking about this deeper knowledge that we have access to when we're centered spiritually. This awareness of true divine nature within man is actually real health. And I would agree with them. And I would even sort of echo the Toltec here, because in the Toltec teachings, they tell you that man's primary reason for working with and engaging with the spirit is a reason of health or healing. We have lost the principles of the great illuminating science of analogy. The tree teaches us irrefutably and inescapably that permanent and eternal part of life, namely the soul of divine consciousness, periodically puts forth into manifestation an arm of its power, which expresses itself in a cycle of birth, growth, maturity, decay, and death. It appropriates to itself the increment of growth gained thereby, and withdraws into the visible world of spiritual being at the end. If then man is made in the image and likeness of this cosmic pattern, it must be true beyond debate that a permanent and eternal part of him, his immortal soul, periodically puts forth a ray of its own power in order to relate itself to the forces at play in the material world, appropriates the harvest of many such repeated experiences, and thus increases its own expansion into infinite divinity and glory of conscious being. The tree settles this debate beyond cavil. So he's talking about the tree as a symbol of cyclical reincarnation. Through this process of seed germinating, creating a sapling, which creates a tree, which creates leaves, which cyclically drop and wither and renew and transform, which create flowers or fruits, and then those fruits and flowers eventually create more seeds. And thus you have a new tree being born from the original tree. Thus, the tree of life literally represents life itself as a cycle of ever-renewing transformation and or reincarnation. Why was man tempted? It is necessary next to extract from the allegory the hidden meaning of the puzzling item of the temptation of the woman by the serpent and the man by the woman. So here this gets pretty interesting. We're getting into Adam and Eve iconography, the archetypes of Adam and Eve. And all I can say here is that it's just an extremely convoluted story. And Alvin Boyd Kuhn so eloquently and so simply brings it right down to its essential meaning. And yes, it's an esoteric meaning, but that's the essential meaning. And so if you're listening, I would say just put on pause all of your current beliefs about this ancient story and listen to what Alvin Boyd Kuhn has to say. This temptation
has been another of the numberless characterizations designed to portray recondite truth that have caught the dullard interest of the West in the toils of its cryptic subterfuge. People of incapacity for reflection have wondered, without end, why God, just and fair in his judgments, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether, why the Lord, just and fair in his judgments, would permit a wicked adversary, such as the theological Satan, that old serpent, to connive, to torment his most righteous servant Job, and here in Genesis to scheme subtly to defeat God's own creative work in the formation of mankind. It has all come from the failure of philosophical acumen to catch the sane significance of the item of the opposition of polarities analyzed in the earlier paragraph. So there it is right there. I mean, that one statement pretty much nails it down. It says, it has all come from the failure of philosophical acumen. But the point is that people have lost the idea that scriptures, they're talking in allegory and in metaphor, and that's what parables are all about. And we've lost sight of this. So people often take spiritual text literally, and they get lost. They get further away from the spiritual meaning. This is where you have people that have lost touch with their own divinity, their own true human spirit. Okay, reading on. Due to this failure of insight, there has been misread into the term temptation, a low human connotation of the word, which leaves the mind miles away from its intended significance. To tempt is to present to the intended victim or subject a lure or prospect of an appealing or desirable nature, with the hope that they may, or he may, bite on it and thus fall into the design trap set by the tempter. Common view, at any rate, has largely taken this form of understanding. A very minute element of this reference, perhaps, does inhere in the evolutionary situation which the Bible glyph is dealing with, but only in the most playful form. The real meaning concerns picturing cosmic procedure, all of which is intrinsically normal and good. Okay, he's just saying the same thing. We've lost sight of the meaning of certain words like tempt, like tempo. And the word tempt has sort of a negative connotation these days, but originally it didn't. It was a lure to a different way, or a different it's basically a different perspective. But I'd like to point out etymologically that the word tempt, the root word etymologically is temp, and temp in Latin or Greek, and of course in English, refers to time. So tempo, right, like in music, tempo is time. So the idea of a temptation is really just binding something in time. And that can have a negative connotation because spirit is timeless. Spirit is infinite. It is unbound. And so to tempt something or somebody, or to tempt a soul, is to bind it in time. And this, again, is the original paradox of spirit and matter, duality. Spirit, which is infinite, bound in some sort of space-time form, thus creating this split in the psyche, with creating the paradox, creating the struggle, the yin and yang. This is life. Moving on. The word itself, temptation, comes either from the Latin tento, to try, to test, to experiment with, or from tempto, to tempt. It is likely that both of these forms are but variants of one original root. In the first instance, if from tento, it would carry the meaning to give trial to try out, in actual practice, to test, or to put the test to the trial. In this reference, it would indicate that the temptation to which God subjects all of his creatures, who are, be it remembered, the cells or members of his own body, is nothing more nor less than his sending them out into the incarnate life, his planting them in his gardens, that they may have a right to the tree of life, and grow by developing their latent capacities and powers through overcoming the opposition of inert matter in the duality of life. So there we go, back to duality. It's literally, it's supposed to mean taking spirit, putting it in form, and then
the spirit has to learn by overcoming opposition and struggles and limitations, and that's how it learns to become more expansive and become more aware. In the book of Revelation, the 7 great rewards are promised to him that overcome it. To grow to higher beauty, spirit must overcome the inertia of matter. An aeonial victory can be gained only as the outcome of incarnational effort, continued until the goal is attained. So God's sons must continuously reincarnate. This is to subject them to the tensions and prevails between them and the force of matter. And this is the ordeal, the trial, the testing, the tension, as it might be better named, instead of the tempting. It has nothing to do with theological sin of disobedience whatsoever. It is God's pathway for all of his children, the natural, beneficent course of his plan for their evolution. There we go. It's just natural that all spirit comes into matter in order to grow. If, on the other hand, the word derives from tempto, it is said that it relates to an even more significant background of meaning. It would be revealed at once as being connected with the Latin word temptus, time, to tempt. A man would then be to bring his soul down from the realms of spirit, where all religions have asserted that consciousness lies above the human apperception of time, where time does not exist, and throw it under the illusion of time's sense. So here he's just saying that in the body, in the form, man has the self-reflective ability to become conscious of his eternal nature. The eternal nature is his nature beyond time. And there you go, beyond the temptation. So the temptation is there to bind you to time so that you can transform beyond it and become conscious of that while in the body. This type of consciousness comes through the reduction of higher mind to a lower tempo of vibration as it falls under the limitations of brain activity. And it would be hard to pick a truer psychological definition of the situation confronting the soul in the Genesis recital than this very one here depicted. It is exactly what happens in the genesis of humanity, and incarnation does expressingly subject the soul to the reduction of the time sense. So, the temptation is just another glyph or symbol for the descent of the soul into mundane life, with the hidden accentuation on the sad diminution of the soul's powers under the trammels of the flesh. It is in the great philosophy of esotericism that one finds the rationalization of the soul's loss of divinity in exchange for human powers of consciousness so thoroughly eliminated. It in reality constitutes the loss of paradise. For what is paradise but a higher dimension of consciousness? So paradise is a higher dimension of consciousness, and the loss of that is being bound in a physical form or tempted in time, and then not being aware of your eternal nature or your timeless nature. And I'd also like to point out that the word paradise, which is Latin-based, etymologically means para, dice, right? So para means close to, and dice is the root word for Dios, meaning God. So paradise means close to God. So man's fall out of paradise. This is him forgetting his divine and eternal nature, his nature beyond the body, his spirit. Few have ever asked the question why the temptation came first from the serpent to the woman and from her to the man. Very interesting perspective. This is a very good question, and very few people have the inclination to even ask, why is the story set up this way? Why does the time, tempo, the temptation, come first from the serpent to the woman and then from the woman to the man? Here we go. Pretty interesting. Yet, this procedure points to the most significant understanding. The point is that the cyclical law tempts woman first, because woman typifies matter. There you go. Woman typifies matter. And this word matter is where you get the word mother. It's the same etymological word. And this is also why matter, which is earth, is called Mother Earth. The reason why the serpent, it goes from the serpent to the woman first, is because she's the one, the gatekeeper of birth. Through her, the tree of life
is planted as a seed and grows.
So the word matter is identical with the Latin word for mother, matter, the eternal mother of all life. And matter is the first element visibly projected on the scene of creation. Matter, a mother, a woman, is the embodiment of the first grades of life and consciousness in a cyclical round, and is therefore first on the scene. Matter must be produced and brought to organic form so as to generate the highly complex mechanisms of brain and nervous system. Air, consciousness, and spirit, the male principles, can be brought to birth and function. The mother must have grown to adulthood in the vast cycles of time before she can produce her Christly offspring of divine mind. So, the cyclical law, the old serpent, involves woman in its toil first. It tempts her in the higher sense of the word, because it offers to every atom of her body the infinite career of growth and expansion to the eventual crowning goal of self-consciousness. So, the woman takes it and eats it first. There you go. All these years, nobody's ever asked this question. Why is the woman the one who gives Adam the apple? But why is it that the serpent tempted her first? Right? Well, here it is, so eloquently put and so logical. And why does it do this? Why does the serpent tempt her first? Because she's the one who gets the crowning jewel of maintaining self-conscious human being by giving birth to them. It's that simple. That's why it's called Mother Earth in Lakota Tkuchimaka. And quoting Chief Orville Looking Horse of the Lakota, the earth is a source, not a resource. Meaning, the earth is our source, so respect it. Don't treat it as it's just a resource, something to be used over and over and over and over again for profit. The matter produces the element of soul as its son, and having in its old age of the evolutionary cycle prepared the organic bodies capable of registering the high vibrations of the soul's consciousness, it invites man. Man is the Sanskrit verb meaning to think, the first thinker, to unite with its partaking of the living experience in eating its glorious foods. Harmoniously with the Bible statement, already canvassed, that God formed man from the atomic dust, rendered as the dust of the ground, which in effect says that God formed man from atomic matter, the woman. There you go. And then one last thing, if you also read the Toltec, if you read the Fifth Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz, he breaks down a really, really beautiful version of paradise in Adam and Eve, and the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And so we just discovered that the tree of life is life itself, spirit in form. But why in the story is there two trees? There's two trees. There's the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. And Don Miguel Ruiz so eloquently puts forth, which it's simply true, the way it used to be known when we had our minds wrapped around it and we were in touch with our spirit. The reason why there's two trees in the garden is because it represents duality. It represents yin and yang. It represents the dualistic nature of life, the paradox and struggle of being a spirit in form, being a spirit in matter, being a spirit in the body, from earth to sky, and from seed to tree, and from sky back to earth, into the cycle of life, forever, eternally. Thanks for listening. Please share.